Hey, so today on the podcast, we're introducing someone who's not just joining our team, but someone whose entire career seems to have been leading up until this moment. Ron Henry has spent over 50 years in the people business, from the music industry to executive placement to ministry leadership development. But more than credentials, Ron is known as a connector, a NetWeaver who sees people and not just positions, and helps leaders find clarity in seasons of change. And as our new Chief Succession Officer at Ministry Transitions, Ron is stepping into a role that allows him to do what he does best: walk alongside ministry leaders, boards, and organizations as they prepare for what's next. So in this episode, we will unpack a bit of Ron's story, what he's learned from helping over 2,000 leaders navigate transition, and why succession planning isn't just a leadership issue, it's a discipleship one. Let's go. This is the Life After Ministry podcast. Hey friends, welcome to the Life After Ministry podcast. I'm here with Ron Henry. Hello, Ron. Good to have you here.
Good to be with you, Matt.
Yeah, you bet. We're going to do a couple things here. Number one, I want to make an announcement. And the announcement is that you have just joined the team of Ministry Transitions as our Chief Succession Officer. So congrats and welcome aboard. Good to have you.
Well, great to be here. Thanks for allowing the time to connect.
Good. And the second thing that we'll be kind of unpacking over the course of this episode is exactly why you in particular are positioned for this position, your life experience that's brought you here, and really what you're going to bring to this world of succession planning and looking ahead. And this is not something, by the way, this is not your first position, your first job that you've ever had. The Lord has set you up. The Lord has brought you through a journey to be able to get to this point. Give me a little bit of the backstory, the background for the journey. What's your career and your life been about up until this point?
Well, one perspective I've learned is as you're further along in the path, you look backwards, you can really see God's plan for your life. While you're going through it, sometimes you don't understand it, but God has that ability. And what I've determined is that my whole career is all about helping position people for success and to be all that God created them to be. And I've been able to play that out in different industries. I was 11 years in the music industry. I was 30 years in executive search, responsible for thousands of people getting the right position, the right time, and also doing a lot of career advisory work. So it's a natural fruition of something that I'm very passionate about and that God has trained me with and given me a lot of experiences and perspectives. So I think it's exactly, as they say, you're exactly where God wants you to be. And I feel that's what this role is for me.
It's great. And our paths crossed in the Nashville, Franklin area. And I found every time I was down there, we'd grab a cup of coffee. And what I found out about you is that you are one of the most well-networked people that I've ever met. And after even some of those coffee, you would say, you'd send me emails, and I actually created my own folder. You had your own folder in my inbox. It's the Ron Henry folder, because you would continue to send me, hey, have you talked to this person? You need to meet this person. And you became known as not just a networker, but this net weaver, which is a unique title, but I love it for you and it feels like it fits. Tell me what a net weaver is.
It's in the onus of God's kingdom. A net weaver, 1 + 1 = 3. And the idea is the intentional connecting of people. And one of the things that I have found that I bring to the table that helped me a lot is when I meet somebody, I see one's potential. And I get excited about that. Now, sometimes I have to be careful because I don't necessarily address a person as to one's potential. So it's strategic. So when I met you, Matt, and I heard your heart, what you're all passionate about, my mind goes immediately is who are people in that community that if they were combined what their gifts are and their networks are, they could do something far greater than they could do individually. And that's what net weaving is about. It's intentionally putting people together in community to advance, do things greater than one can do by themselves.
Yeah, you're weaving a web and bringing people together. I love it. And over the years, you've positioned and put into place more than 2,000 people, leaders specifically. But what have you learned over the time between what is a good fit and what is a great fit?
The great fit is where there's a cultural and heart match.
Huh.
It's not a matter of getting a job or getting a assignment. I like to say, I can do that. It's not a matter of just doing it. Not a matter of just how much money I'll make or how I'll look in the community, but is this something that you're designed for? And that's the exciting thing about what I know what Ministry Transitions does is help people assess that. Where are you really? So that you can match something that's really something that I view as God ordained.
Yeah.
So, and that's the big thing. The second point, though, is in the transition process, is that people do pretty well at picking up that as to when to engage something, but they don't open themselves up to understand when that assignment is over, and when is it time to leave.
Yeah.
So it's a much more sophisticated area than just getting someone into a right role.
So Ron, I imagine that over the course of time, you've seen a lot of transitions, and they run the gamut. They could they could go really well, and they can go really poorly. I imagine that you've seen all of those. What's the difference? Where do transitions thrive, and where have you seen them crash and burn? And what's the difference between?
Yeah, that's a really good question. But I think I'll address where they crash and burn. They crash and burn when people are desperate, people are fearful or prideful. They don't take the time to really do the due diligence and get to know the heart and the culture of which they're engaging in, even to ascertain whether what they can bring is a good match for what the organization needs. So those are the ones that, and anyone who gets hired in that situation more than likely doesn't last, or it doesn't last, or they'll come back and say, "I hate the job," because it's not what it was designed for. The great stories are those individuals who really feel a sense in their heart of knowing what they can provide of value, knowing how they can really they go into an interview or engagement saying, "How can I help you? What are your needs?" And they invest the time and go through the process. Now, they have to also learn what is it they can provide. Who are they? I mean, some people are great builders. Some people are great maintainers. So what can you provide? So that knowledge, and go through the process and engage all parties. When I say engage all parties is, the fact is, what does your spouse, if you're married, what does your spouse think about? Those are the ones that truly, it's almost like I use the cliche many years, is you're dating. And when people date, they learn a lot about each other. And those are the ones that really work out well because you're connecting at a deeper level.
Yeah. And we found that you really have to, it's not just checking the boxes, right? That they're the right height, they're tall, dark, and handsome, but there's a cultural fit. There is a chemistry that has to be a fit. And so you really want to be able to look at that, that position, that person in all of those different facets. And so that's part of that process. And it's not quick. It's not a microwave transition world, right? You have to slow cook a lot of these things.
Yeah, the key word in that is when it goes well, you're focused on building a relationship. When it crashes and burns, you're focusing on self.
Yeah. One of the things that we've talked about is that you feel like in this season of life that you are positioned perfectly for this. You could be out there on the golf course getting some swings in or hanging out at the beach house. But why this position and why this time?
Probably the best is really, I had influences in my journey of amazing men of God who really shared with me the idea of understanding how you can serve and finishing strong. I think the best answer to that is my wife said, even if you weren't getting paid, Ron, you would be doing what you're doing because you really care about the people and their well-being. I mean, the impact on someone, the residual impact on getting the right people in the right spots and in the right concept, it's not just that individual, it's families, it's the people we're workers. So, I'm just blessed that I can still provide a contribution and maybe raise a few questions and raise insights into that. So it's a great way to finish out my season of life and my as I say, my fourth quarter.
Yeah, there you go. My dad always says, I'm living in my fourth quarter. I hope I'm not in overtime. So
Yeah, I don't
it's
want to. Yeah, especially the way overtimes are being satisfied these days in sports. So
yeah, that's right. Uh, so this role, and we've been looking for somebody like you in this spot, but the title that Bill came up with, Bill loves a good title, Chief Succession Officer. That's packed with a lot of meaning. What does it mean to you to be stepping into that spot?
I'm a CSO, I guess that's what they call it. No,
That's
it
right.
just means that there's a degree of responsibility and accountability to really focus in on people's success and organizational success. That's what
Mm.
hits me. There's a real reward for that in the lives of people. So it's something that just puts a little bit more impetus on versus someone saying, "Hey, why don't you just get some sales out there and hire up a couple clients?" No, there's a intentional purpose here and objective of what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, and I find a lot of times, it's not that there's a shortage of need. We know the need exists. That especially in the nonprofit and the church world, that we're always in transition. Things are always changing. People are always looking for
Right.
finding new jobs. They're thinking about what's my parachute out? Am I going to jump out of the plane, or am I going to get pushed out of the plane myself? Like
Mm-hmm.
what's that process? But in all of this, where are we missing it? Where is the church? I've always said that the church is really good at saying hello, and we're not really great at saying goodbye. Where can we improve in even just this conversation?
Well, to me, it's lack of awareness and lack of knowledge. I don't think that people within the church or even in the nonprofit world no one is training or conditioning people to the finer points of what makes for a successful functional transition or role within an organization. And so what happens is, like in a church, you'll see people in different roles, and they're people of faith, strong people of faith. They can teach the word and guide the word, but their lifestyle and the way they look at their career is no different than anyone else in the world. In
Mm.
other words, it's like I always say, well, pray to God, ask God what you think, and God's going, I already gave you everything you need. Why don't you just do it?
Mm.
And they keep wanting this miraculous phone call to come in to give them this perfect job. Well, I always said to people, it's kind of hard to have a perfect job when you're not perfect.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's the big world is just lack of training and understanding. We've conditioned ourselves to not think in terms of good stewardship. And stewardship to me is not just the financial side; it's the people resources. Do you have a plan for your organization? You're not going to, one, you're not going to be there forever, and two, maybe something will happen and you leave. So, are you going to leave that? In a mess. So all you've done for all these years gets blown up because you weren't doing the pre-planning and thinking about secession.
Sometimes people aren't ready. There's a resistance towards transitioning or even retiring and thinking through what's next. What do you say to the leader or even the founder who is in that position? They say, "Well, I'm not really ready to talk about succession yet. That's down the road." And they kind of want to just keep pushing that back. How do you lean in and say, I think we should talk about it. Even if it's years down the road, here's what we should be at least asking ourselves and the organization.
Well, the cryptic answer, really short answer, is who's in charge. At the end of the day, God's going to do with you exactly what He wants to do with you. So you can either be in alignment with God's plans for your life or not. I mean, so if your time is up, guess what? You can either be wise and show wisdom and prepare for such a time as that, even though it may be 4 or 5 years down the road, or you can just let it happen and then destroy the things that are around you. I mean, I remember the stories of one organization that identified a young man in their organization that they thought could become the executive director. But for 5 years, they worked that young man to train him and equip them and help them get the support of the organization, so that when it's so. I mean, what's the best transition stories is Moses to Joshua. How many years did Joshua work under Moses?
Quite a bit.
Yeah,
40.
Yeah, and it's a pretty smooth transition from what I've read in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
So so what prohibits people to do it is primarily leaders who have allowed their identity to really get wrapped up in the position, and they forgot whose it is, and I mean, through God's grace, you're in that role. It belongs to Him. So it comes back to fear, identity, pride. I heard a gentleman speak to me, a pastor he's 89 years old, very strong, 17 years of pulpit, very gregarious. And he spoke to a group of about 80 men, of which I would say 90% were over the age of 60. And he stood up there and said, "Listen, guys, I want to tell you your greatest sin." And he paused. "Your greatest sin is pride. You can't let go of the past and live today." He said, "I'm 89 years old. I lost the love of my life 2 years ago. I got a bum hip. I can't really see well, walk with a limp, but today is the best day of my life."
Wow. What's the moment? Because you've had so many moments and so many interactions. What's the piece of all of this that, as you think about people taking that next step, and sometimes the next step feels a little bit more like a leap than a step. It feels like there's a lot of faith that's involved, and it's not just it's not a lateral move. This is going to require more of me. It's going to require more of an organization as they're getting into something. But what does that look like for you? What's the moment that you love? Is it initially having that conversation? Is it getting somebody into that space and they're finally fitted into that position and the organization is now thriving as a result? What part of the process really lights you up?
When they get the realization of who God created them to be, when they get outside of self, outside of their identifiable features, and realize, wait a minute, this is what God is inviting me to be part of. And so that's when I start viewing and seeing that realization is when they will now start fulfilling what I see as their potential. And so it's really that process of awareness. Sure, being obedient is not easy. Saying yes when everyone else the world is saying no is not easy. The idea of resigning a position before you have another position. So in essence, you may not, as I say very often, you have a new assignment from God at that time. You just don't like what it is and how you're being compensated, but you're still sovereign to God.
When you look at the landscape of the church, and when I say the church, I'm talking the big C church, and so that includes, we're working with all kinds of different organizations, whether that's a nonprofit, a missions agency, higher ed, basically even Christian-owned businesses. Where are the places that you feel like you're getting excited about what is happening, what God is doing in these days in the church?
The probably focus point of where I get excited today revolves around the millennial generation. That generation who will be the one who will take the transition position. And that generation is very transparent, very accountable, but more than anything else, they're just very community minded. They think of outside of themselves versus inside themselves. And that gets me excited, that mindset. I mean, the number of people in the workplace, I say workplace, which covers every place you do God's work, that generation, they're gathering together in community, taking the time to learn what other people are doing. I mean, that gets me really excited for the potential, because it gets us back to what the core church was at the beginning. It's a community. As one gentleman said, we did a study here. It said a lot of times you have you have individual ponds in a community. Well, if they're not connected to each other, they become stagnant. Now the mindset is of this, a lot of the people in that generational area, let's say mid-30s to mid-50s, whatever, that area now, they're so, everything they talk about is community minded. Even so, many of the churches, the basic churches are referring to small groups as community groups. So it's all drawing back to that.
There's I've led a lot of tours to Israel over the years, and there's a concept or an idea that we share along the way. And in the Hebrew, it's called Mayim Chaim. It means living water. And there's not a lot of water in Israel. They're along the Mediterranean Sea, but you got the Jordan River up in the north, and it flows down into the Sea of Galilee. And then it actually continues to flow out of the bottom of the Sea of Galilee out of the south, and it flows into what we call the Dead Sea, called the Dead Sea because there's nothing alive in it. And we get to tell this story of Mayim Chaim is living water, that if you want to be full of this living water, that you have to have a source of life flowing into you, like the Sea of Galilee. But it also can't just sit there. You can't be a bucket. You have to be a conduit. And it has to also flow out of you. And if all you ever do is just have input, you become a little bit more like the Dead Sea, the dead water.
Right.
And there is no outflow. Who've been some people along your journey and in the way that have been pouring into you and have mentored you that have led you to this point, and some of the people that you've been excited that you've been able to pour out into?
Well, the during the 90s, it was probably the most prime area of people where I had the opportunity to receive amazing gifts from people pouring into me. I didn't come to the Lord until age 40. So as a result, I didn't have a lot of background. And so an influential person to me was a pastor, Juan Carlos Ortiz, who wrote a book, and the whole thing was focused on this guy called Jesus. So my foundational piece was a living relationship with Jesus. And then through that, you take on Henry Blackaby, who I had a chance to meet later on, who wrote a book called Experiencing God. Look where God's working, join him. Right? Again, out of your own box. Then later, when I was a small church where I got saved and I became vice chairman and did things, I was being mentored by a gentleman named Pastor Orville Butcher. And Pastor Orville Butcher is not a well-recognized name, but he really reflected Corinthians. I mean, he had kindness, all the fruits of the Spirit. He demonstrated them. And he was the kind of guy that would preach behind the piano. He found, so his wisdom and knowledge and contacts back in the generation, he was close friends with Billy Graham. And then you had other people like Dr. Ted Engstrom, who fed into me the concept of how to finish strong. When I met him in 1996, he served on 20 different boards. And as a result, and then during that time, he got a macular degeneration. He had a bad hip. He still wrote 3 more books, wrote 50 total till age 90. Wow. So he shared with me that if you have that passion to keep giving and serving, to continue that. And then Dr. Bruce Wilkinson, who talked a lot about the priesthood of believers. Once again, reinforcing who we are and what our role is to be. So these all help shape me. And then being in accountable relationships. That's the other thing when looking at someone in transition, what type of accountable relationships do you have in your life? As a person of faith, are you in a small group? What kind of relationship? Do you have men in your life? Do you have women in life? Whatever it is, that shapes a lot about what your accountability can be. So all those things sort of moved me and developed me to the foundational piece of where I am today. And all those people dealt with great adversity, great lack of acceptance, because they were something out of the new. It's just like if you want to get living water functionally in a community, the people who provide that are church planters or even entrepreneurs. They're coming in with the new ideas, a new concept. That's the freshness, and that's the way no one's comfortable. If you're an entrepreneur or a church planner, you don't have a safety net. There's no one writing the big check saying, okay, you got your nice $1,000 salary here. Right. So those are key points.
Hey, somebody's listening here today who is a ministry leader of some kind. They might sit on a board of some kind. They're listening to this episode. What's one thing that you would want to tell them in the realm of thinking about what's coming? What are the next steps? What does succession look like? If you could lean in and whisper and you can talk directly to them, what would you tell them?
I've had quite a bit of experience dealing with boards in a faith-based world, and the one major thing is understand what you're going to be held accountable for in that role, and understand that it's your responsibility. What is the call of a board member? Not to write a check. That's governance. Know your responsibility. My big thing in life is when judgment day comes, and God says, "I gave you that situation, that ministry to work on, and put you on that board. Let's talk about what you were able to accomplish. You are the accountable governance for that organization. So it is not just because you're not getting paid doesn't mean it's not a serious role and one you're going to be held accountable for. So, I was actually approached by a major international global want to be a board member, and I responded. I said I was very impressed that very much honored that you would even consider me, and then I talked to God about it. God said, as we talked about it, and I prayed about it because I was doing some consultative work, working with this current CEO. And so God asked me the question, where can you have greater impact? In mentoring the CEO or having the CEO work for you?
Ron, we're excited to have you on the Ministry Transitions team. And you are on board. You are with us. You are effective immediately. you are on the job. And so if people want to reach out to you, you are available for a conversation, a call, a cup of coffee if they're in the Franklin area of Tennessee. But how did they get a hold of you?
Well, the best way is probably using my email address, which is ron@ministrytransitions.com. Or you could respond at the website, to set an appointment, and you get the message to me that way. I think that's the ideal way. And I pride myself. I'd be careful in using that word, pride myself. But I pride myself that I will respond to everybody. It's important. You're important. Everyone out there is important. And if you're going to reach out to me, I view that you're my important person for that day.
Yeah. Well, it always starts with a conversation, and it can be a cup of coffee in person. It can be a virtual cup of coffee. And having had more than one of those with you, Ron, thankful for those times, and thankful that we get to work together, and we're going to get to help build the kingdom and to bring. We're not going to bring all the solutions to the kingdom, and all the solutions won't be here until Jesus returns. But until then, this small slice of the pie, we get to do together and link arms. And so we're excited and wanted to say welcome aboard, and thankful to have you here.
This is my pleasure, Matt, and I look forward to it. I never envisioned when we first met that we'd be journeying together, but I love your passion. I love your focus. So it's truly an honor and a privilege. So.
Well, thank you, Ron, and bless you. And we'll be hearing a lot more from you in the future.
Great. Thank you.
If something in this conversation resonated with you, whether you're leading a church, you're serving on a board, or you're in the midst of your very own transition, or even thinking about it, we would love to walk with you. Ron is now meeting with leaders and organizations who want to approach succession with both clarity and care. So first, you can visit ministrytransitions.com and you can book a confidential call, or to learn more about how we help churches, nonprofits, and ministry leaders prepare for what's next. You can also directly get Ron at ron@ministrytransitions.com. And don't forget, subscribe, share this episode with someone who might need it. We are always here, and we're excited to work.